So we're waiting for the stream to get moving, and it looks like
we are now sending some data
and
over.
it looks like and I don't know why that audio was on. I apologize for that. All right, so let's see. Looks like the stream is now online right across the board, which is good news. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And over the course of many years, my team and I, we've helped represent thousands of people facing criminal charges throughout our justice system. And over the course of that time representing people, we've seen a lot of issues, a lot of problems that exist throughout our justice system. In particular, we're talking about problems with the police, issues with prosecutors, malfeasance from judges. We've seen even politicians sort of escape what we would consider to be justice. And so what we did is we started this program. It's called Watching the Watchers. It's what we do. We want to hold them accountable. The people who are elected, the people who are in charge, the people who we have empowered with a sense of responsibility to sort of guide and care over the rest of us. We want to make sure that they're being held to the same standards as you or I. And that's what we have done here. And that's what we want to continue to do. And so grateful that you're here. Love that you're here, and want to invite you to go ahead and subscribe while you're being a part of this program, because what we're going to be doing today is a pre-debate analysis. As you probably know, as basically everybody knows now, the debate is set for tonight. It is the final debate of the election season in 2020. We've got Joe Biden, we've got Donald Trump. They're going to be heading over to Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. But can you believe how quickly this has come upon us? Take a look. This is how much time is left. We have 11 days, 5 hours, 57 minutes, and counting before we reach Tuesday, November 3rd. So the clock is ticking. We are just about there, folks. I know that this has been a very, very long election season. We're almost there. Now, is this going to be resolved on November 3rd? Probably not. I think we can all sort of agree on that. Now, we would like it to be, right? And I think the country would be better served if we had a big decision one way or the other, a landslide, or at least a resounding victory one way or the other. That way we could have some definitiveness about who our next president is going to be. I think the worst potential scenario would be we don't know on November 3rd, and we have months and months and months or less than that, right? There's a deadline on that. This can't go on forever. But if there's a couple months of uncertainty, there's going to be lawsuits and all sorts of stuff flying around. So many people are really focused on what is taking place tonight, because this could be the make or break moment for either campaign. For the Trump campaign, this could be a situation where, according to the national polls, he's underwater currently today. I don't necessarily buy that, but by the popular notion that we see amongst the chatterati, as we call them, they're indicating, or their side of the story here is that Donald Trump is deep underwater. This debate is going to be his last opportunity to try to change the course of the election. If you are a Joe Biden fan, of course, you need him to not blow it. You need him to not do something that would cause people to have a second look at him. If the polls are to be believed, then he's up by a large margin. And so all he needs to do is basically not blow it, just not screw up, just continue to do what he's doing and just not rock the boat too much, and then he'll be successful. So we've got a lot we want to cover today. There's some issues around this final debate, as there are in every presidential election, but there seem to be a little bit more, at least in this particular event. So let's dive into the debate. We're going to talk about where this is taking place. We're going to talk about some of the rules. We're going to talk about the moderator. And then Donald Trump has a special guest that he is going to be bringing in to the debate. Each side gets a certain number of tickets. So Donald Trump has identified who his special guest will be, and we're going to talk about that. So as I had already mentioned, the debate tonight is taking place in Nashville, Tennessee, over at Belmont University. You can see the campus there. It looks very, very beautiful. I've never been there. I've been to Nashville, but I had not been to Belmont, at least as far as I know. I may have been there as a kid, but I'm not sure. But beautiful place. You can see this is sort of what the inside looks like. This is the scene where the debate will be taking place. This is, I think, the auditorium that they're building, and then they have an actual tent outside for a lot of the media. So you can see here, this is sort of what the floor looks like. They've actually built out a tent, and they're saying that there's going to be all sorts of COVID precautions. You can see all the social distancing taking place here, right? These seats are really, really put far apart with screens for all of the media and for all of the people who are going to be following along to sit in. Back in the main room, they're going to be socially distanced, of course, and the candidates are going to be spaced out, and so it will be interesting to see how they do this. We saw how they did it at the vice presidential election. That was right around the same time that Trump was going through his COVID stuff, and they were still able to do a good job in light of the COVID precautions. But speaking of the COVID precautions, let's just take a quick look at them. We see here that they are going to require that both candidates get tested. So both Trump and Joe Biden are going to be required to be tested. I think it is the day of or the day before. Everybody in the audience and all of the attendees are going to have face mask requirements. They're going to be doing temperature checks. There's going to be about 200 people who are in that outside tent that I just showed you. They're going to be recirculating the air somewhere around 12 times per hour. And then the candidates, so Donald Trump and Joe Biden, will actually be 12 feet apart, and there's not going to be any plexiglass. We saw that one debate where there was, I think it was in California, I forget who was debating, but they actually had this bizarre-looking plexiglass dividing the candidates, and I thought it was a little bit distracting and a little bit ridiculous, if you ask me, just because they weren't that far apart. A plexiglass doesn't block the air going up and above and around and under the plexiglass. So that's a good thing. Now, let's get into what is going to be discussed tonight, the actual conversation. I have something in my eyeball. What's going on? All right, let's get rid of that. All right, so let's go over to the debate topics. The debate topics tonight are probably going to look pretty familiar to you, but here is what we have queued up. The Commission on Presidential Debates, the bipartisan group that's been organizing and running these face-offs, I like that, bipartisan group that has been running these face-offs for more than 3 decades, announced last week, so this was last week, this article is from today, I think, fighting the topics are going to be COVID-19, fighting COVID-19, American families, national security, leadership, climate change, and race in America. Those are going to be discussed tonight at Belmont University in Tennessee. So we see these here, right? Fighting COVID-19, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Because to me, it sounded, when I first read those topics, like we just talked about that. We just had the first presidential debate. Remember the history here. We had a first debate, which we all watched, with Chris Wallace, and it was kind of a train wreck. We talked about it on this channel, and then we were supposed to have a second presidential debate, but that didn't happen, and both candidates actually just went and did their own town halls. This was because of the COVID stuff. Trump had COVID, and the Biden campaigns, they couldn't come to an arrangement, so there was no second debate. This is really the second debate, but it's technically the third debate because it was scheduled as the third debate. And to me, it sounds like the topics that we just covered, fighting COVID-19, American families, race in America, national security, and leadership, we talked about all of those things at the first debate. So why are we talking about those things again, right? And it wasn't just my recollection. I actually went back and I looked. This is the list of the topics from the first debate, right? September 22nd. These are the debates: Trump and Biden records, Supreme Court, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in our cities, and then the integrity of the election. All of those were scheduled for September 29th. And so you may say, well, those sound a little bit different. Are they really that different? So this is something that we do in criminal law. When you have different witnesses, different statements, or different series of events, what you'll do is you'll put them into a table and you'll just sort of chart the responses out. So you'll say, okay, we'll put officer number 1 in column 1, officer number 2 in column 2, officer number 3 in column 3. And what you'll do on the first column is you'll say, what did they say the time was when this happened? What did they say the color of the car was when this happened? What did they say? Who is the person who said that they were the recipient of the punch? Okay, this person. And then what you do is you just sort of compare and contrast the officer's statements amongst one another. So Officer A said that the car was beige. Officer B said it was black, and Officer C said it was red. Okay, well, why is that? Most of the time they're going to be matching, right? They'll all say it was a black car. But what you can do is when you go through that analysis and you actually go through all the different variables, sometimes you can see some inconsistencies there. So what I like to do is just put things in charts and just compare the right side and the left side. And here is what we have. So the first debate, we had COVID-19. In the second debate, we once again have COVID-19. In the first debate, we had the Supreme Court. We don't have any of that in the second debate. So that's missing. Well, it's probably in large part because it's not really an issue anymore. We're going to have a vote. I believe that comes on Monday, and the nominee has already been basically confirmed as far as I can tell. The Senate has the votes. There's been no indication that they don't have the votes. So I think she's going to get nominated with flying colors, not even going to be an issue. So that's not on the agenda. In the first debate, we talked about Trump and Biden's records. So today we're going to talk about leadership, right? Which is kind of the same thing. When you're talking about your record, you want to talk about how much you've been leading. And so really, in my mind, that is the exact same topic. Also, we're going to be talking, in the first debate, we talked about the economy. Today, we're talking about American families. I don't really know what that means, but I'm going to guess it has to do with how well they're doing in light of coronavirus, in light of the economic downturn that came from the coronavirus, and so on. So I don't know what else we're going to talk about American families, but to me, sounds like it's the economy again. They didn't even try on this next one. The first one in the debate, we talked about race and violence in our cities. Tonight, we're going to be talking about race in America. So presumably, they're also going to be talking about violence there, but it's not in the title, but it's pretty dang close. In the first debate, we talked about the integrity of the election. Tonight, we're talking about national security, which, I think the integrity of the election is actually a narrower topic than national security. But certainly, if our elections are being overrun by Russian, Chinese, Iranian influence, then that's going to impact the national security. So really kind of one of the closely related topics. Basically the same thing. National security, maybe they'll talk about some other things, right? Maybe we'll talk about the threat of terrorism, which I think is kind of a low priority issue at this point, at least in the current environment. So I don't know what else they're going to talk about there. Maybe Russian influence. Maybe we're going to get back into the collusion, nonsense again with the Russians. Who knows? It would be very curious if, as a part of the national security conversation, we talk about the most recent developments with Hunter Biden and how that might expose Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and the Biden family to potential national security risks just as a result of some leverage, some potential for blackmail, some conflicts of interest that seem to be coming to light now. There's not a lot of concrete evidence, but we're starting to see more smoke and even a little bit of flame now. So we'll see if that comes up at the debate. Not holding my breath on that one. We also, if you recall, during the first debate near the end, Chris Wallace, for some bizarre reason, asked them both about climate change. Now, that was not on the original list of topics, which is why that is in parentheses here. It wasn't supposed to be talked about, but for some reason, he just brought up a climate change question at that first debate. And now, officially, it is on the card as a topic for the second debate. And, climate change, I'm all for clean water and I'm all for clean air and I'm all for saving the planet, but I just don't know how that is one of the more relevant topics today. I just don't see that. I think there's a lot of other issues that people are more concerned about. One of the things that I thought was bizarre, why is this missing, is any of the foreign policy discussion. Remember in previous debates, if you've been following debates for a certain period of time, foreign policy is almost a debate in and of itself. They almost have an entire debate for foreign policy. I don't remember exactly from the Obama-McCain debates or the Obama-Romney debates or the Trump-Hillary debates. But foreign policy is something we talk about a lot and seems to be a little bit absent from these debates. We have, one thing about national security, and again, I don't really know what that is, but Joe Biden has been in the Senate for a long time. He's been the vice president for 8 years. He's engaged in a lot of foreign policy. We would like to maybe review his record. Donald Trump has some pretty impressive accomplishments in his first term. We should also talk about those things. So why is this being left off? I don't know. And I don't know why we're having a rehash of literally basically the same topics as the first debate. You can see it right there. It's essentially the same debate. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, both campaigns, of course, they've got their commentary, their response to how this is all being structured. As is the normal with the Trump campaign, they are complaining and, going back against the media, explaining that this is all unfair and they're unhappy with it. And a few days ago, so 3 days ago now, Trump's campaign manager, Bill Stepien, posted this on Twitter. He said, "Our letter to the BDC, the Biden Debate Commission, And he wrote this big, long letter. We're going to go through it here in a little bit. But I want to show you just what happened here, right? So on October 19th, when he posted this, I screenshotted this today. He's got 12.7 thousand retweets, 3.6 quote retweets. So somebody actually, said something about it, 26,000 likes. And this letter itself has been published in just dozens of newspapers around the country. The media just picked this thing up and they went hog wild with it. And a lot of the people who were sort of responding to this letter were saying that this was just a huge excuse for Donald Trump to back out of the debate. They're saying, he sent this letter. This is just cover for him. He doesn't want to debate Biden again. The first debate was such a disaster that this is going to be his excuse. He's going to blame the debate commission and he's going to try to, weasel his way out of this thing. And a lot of people had that perspective and a lot of people were, criticizing him for that. And if that were the intention of this letter, I think that would have been a valid concern. But as we read through this letter, I think there's a little bit of an ulterior motive there that sort of went over the heads of a lot of the people in the media. So let's take a look at what he actually wrote here. Bill Stepien, he is saying here that the commission, he's directing this towards the co-chairs of the Commission for Presidential Debates, Frank Dorothy Ridings, Kenneth Wolak, sends this to them just 3 days before the debate, right? October 19th, the debate is scheduled for today. It's 3 days ago. He says, "Dear members, with great concern over the announced topics for what was always billed as the foreign policy debate in a series of events agreed to by blah, 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 the moderator, Kristen Welker, announced her new topics, which we already covered. Only a few of them even touch on foreign policy." And here he says, "Indeed, almost all of them were discussed at length during the first debate," which he's right. And it's hilarious. These letters are just so funny. During the first debate won by President Trump over moderator Chris Wallace and candidate Joe Biden. So even his campaign manager just has that Trump little flavor to it. As is the longstanding custom, has always been promised, we had expected that foreign policy would be the central focus of an October 22 debate. We urge you to recalibrate your topics. And I would agree with that, right? We've already heard about these things. We've already talked about COVID. We've already talked about the economy a lot. We've already talked about race in America. We spent a whole segment during the last debate about Breonna Taylor and about, justice reform and the First Step Act and the crime bills and all that stuff. So why are we spending time on this again, right? I would agree with that perspective that there are other things to talk about, and we would like to see maybe a variety of topics. There's no reason to rehash the same things we already talked about in my mind. But this is not really why they wrote the letter, right? Do you really think that Bill Stepien on October 19th was thinking that the debate commission would go ahead and just modify their topics? Oh, okay, Trump's campaign's not happy about this. Yeah, the debate's in 3 days, but let's just go ahead and we'll scrap all these topics and we'll just bring this back to foreign policy, right? That's not going to happen. It's already in play. They already have the whole thing scripted probably and all of the questions laid out, with the moderator going to take, some minor adjustments here and there, but by and large, this thing is set in stone. So why would Bill Stepien write a letter and publish it on Twitter for everybody to see and for everybody to come down on Donald Trump and say Donald Trump is going to bail on this debate? He's a coward. He's not somebody who's going to stand up and confront Joe Biden on any of these issues. Why would they open their campaign up to that level of exposure? Well, it's really because in the next paragraph, he uses this letter to just unload on a whole slew of different topics, all these different talking points that they can just cram down the media's throat, essentially. And he goes through here. He says, look, we understand Joe Biden is desperate to avoid these conversations on foreign policy. Trump has secured historic peace agreements. The UAE, Bahrain. He talks about Obama's own Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, said he was wrong on nearly every major foreign policy issue, right? And he goes on and on and on. He talks about Iran, pallets loaded with cash. Joe Biden has been in office for 47 years. And then he brings this up, right, which is what we've been talking about on this channel, that he's the financial beneficiary of a deal arranged by his son, Hunter, and a communist Chinese-related energy company. So this whole paragraph, from a persuasion perspective, this is why they released this statement. They wanted everybody to go through and read this. And it's a pretty effective maneuver. I've seen this article probably in 3 different pages, newspapers that are all major publications. They're saying, oh gosh, Donald Trump's trying to bail out of this thing. But then they published his letter. So they published his letter that has this just, barrage of talking points that go against the Joe Biden campaign. And I think it was kind of a good move. He said this next paragraph is now more about showing bias on behalf of the debate commission, says that a number of times they've sided with the Biden campaign. They tried to move the debate earlier, the Trump campaign did, and they refused to do that because the Biden campaign objected. There was no flexibility in the schedule. The second debate was scheduled in Miami. They made it virtual without the Trump campaign's consultation, and so on, even though he had tested negative for the virus. And it just kind of goes on and on and on, right? The debates, let me move myself over here. The debate turned into a fiasco. They turned the entire debate season into a fiasco. So where I thought that Donald Trump played a large part in making that first debate a disaster, he's blaming it back on the commission, said that the moderator was a combatant on stage. But then they have a good point here. They go through a lot of what has been going on with the debate commission. Remember, the second debate was supposed to be hosted by another guy. I think his name is Steve Scully. We have his name here on the next slide. But, he posted something. He was sending a letter over to one of Trump's former people, asking if he should respond to Trump, and there was this back and forth. He came out and said it was hacked, but it wasn't really hacked. He actually was posting it, so he got an indefinite suspension, and the debate commission tried to cover it up, and so on and so forth. And then we go into this final part of the conversation here, which is about the microphone. We're going to spend a little bit more time on this, but now we have a new rule as a result of the first debate that says that the microphones will now be shut off. And so he's complaining about that, right? An unnamed person will have the ability to shut off a candidate's microphone. Well, who is that unnamed person? And who is responsible? And what are the criteria for shutting a microphone off? And, how much time? And is there any objective standards? Are there any rules that are going to apply to both people? Or is somebody going to have the power to just, exercise some discretion, which will, of course, then be criticized later on? So I actually read a little bit more of the rules on that. But, this letter was something I think was a good kind of strategic move in terms of amplifying their objections, because every single media page that I saw that was talking about the debate tonight posted this letter. So I don't know, I know that they wanted to post it to say that Trump was trying to flake out of this debate, but I think their ulterior motive was to just amplify this message. And I think the media kind of got taken in on that, and they did a good job of amplifying that. So the next question that I had was, well, what were the original rules? If Trump campaigns actually complaining about this debate, what were the original rules, right? All of these debates have been scheduled for months. Did they already set the topics previously, or where did these things come from? And what I was able to find was a prior story here. So some of this is, I think, probably pretty hard to see. Let's see if we can zoom in here. You can see here that the first debate, Chris Wallace. Second debate was Susan Page. Steve Scully was the moderator who, was basically lied about saying his Twitter campaign or his Twitter feed was hacked. Third presidential debate is going to be moderated by Kristen Welker. She's the co-anchor of Weekend Today. She's a White House correspondent with NBC and MSNBC, by the way. So we'll talk about her here in a little bit. But the first debate was 6 segments, 15 minutes each. The vice presidential debate, we saw that. Second presidential debate was already scheduled. And then the third presidential debate, the second one was canceled. So the third one, it says the format for the debate will be identical to the first debate, and the moderators are going to be the ones who basically pick the questions. So, this is it. We didn't have any questions or any, specific topics that were set out during this time. As always, the moderators alone will select the questions to be asked, which are not known to the CPD or to the candidates. So it's up to the moderator, right? So the moderator can then decide what they want to ask. And our moderator tonight is Kristen Welker, who we will talk about here in a minute. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive. Who is this person? Where does she come from? What is she all about? But before we do, let's talk about that other component that was in Bill's letter where he was complaining about the microphones being shut off, because I also thought that was a pretty valid concern. If you have somebody who just is on a buzzer and they just get to shut the microphone off anytime somebody starts rambling, that opens the door for a lot of potential abuse. If somebody is, even remotely anti-Trump, everybody on the internet's going to be looking at seeing how much talk time they had. When did the microphones go off? There's going to be all sorts of calculations on this thing. And everybody's going to want to know who is the person who shuts the mic off. And that's kind of how we all had this thing framed. But really what I think the debate commission did was pretty smart, and they sort of flipped that. So rather than saying that if you talk too long or you're interjecting, we're going to shut your mic off. So it's not going to be a proactive thing. It's just going to be how the questions are structured. So once a question is asked, the person it's addressed to gets a certain period of time, and then their microphone automatically goes off. Right? There's nobody shutting it off. It just goes off. You get your 2 minutes or whatever it is, and then it just turns off. So there's no person who's responsible for shutting it off. So, Bill Stepien was sort of hinting that this would be an unfair, unobjective, biased moderator, some person who's going to be actually sitting there dinging Trump every time he keeps going off. And it doesn't seem that way to me, at least not from what The Guardian is reporting. So here we can see the Presidential Debate Commission adopts rules to mute microphones. The 90-minute debate is divided into 15-minute segments on 6 topics, which each candidate is granted 2 minutes to deliver uninterrupted remarks before proceeding to an open debate for 9 minutes of each segment. Again, the nonpartisan commission, they always got to remind you that it's nonpartisan, on Monday announced that in order to enforce this agreed upon rule, the only candidate whose microphone will be open during these 2-minute periods is the candidate who has the floor under the rules. Both mics will then be unmuted for open discussion. And they said, hey, we realize after the discussions with both campaigns, neither campaign may be totally satisfied with the measures announced today. One may think they go too far. One may think they do not go far enough. We are comfortable that these actions strike the right balance and that they are in the interest of the American people for whom these debates are held. And I think it's pretty fair. I think it's pretty reasonable. I think it's a pretty good deal. I like it a lot better than this idea that both mics will be on all the time and then somebody shuts them off. I think it's better that they're just, the default rule is they're off. They're just off. They turn them on when you get your 2 minutes. If you want to go over your 2 minutes, you don't manage your time well, they just go off. That's how it is. It doesn't matter what you're saying or what you're in the middle of. They just get shut off. And I think it's a much better approach than the other way. But we will see how that stands out. Now, remember, per the COVID rules that we just discussed, these candidates are going to be 12 feet apart, right? And if you're 12 feet apart and you start shouting from somebody else, you may actually still be able to pick that up on the microphone. So you can see the audio changes a little bit when I back up, but you can still kind of hear it. I'm watching the meter over there, and I know that you can hear it. It doesn't sound as silky smooth as it does when I get up nice and close. But my point is, if Donald Trump or Joe Biden, if they're 12 feet away and they start shouting in either person's direction, it is going to be something that I think we'll be able to hear as an audience, but we don't know, right? We don't know how loudly that will come through if it does. And it will kind of look ridiculous, I think, if they're trying to do that. So, who does this benefit? A lot of people are saying, oh gosh, Donald Trump, he's not going to know what to do. He's going to be a mess with this. And I was thinking, this might be good for him, right? He got a lot of criticism from me intentionally last time at the last debate because I was sort of irritated by what we saw out of him. This constant interruption. He looked unpresidential. I think I don't think he did himself any favors with that performance. And so if he can't do that anymore, you're kind of asking yourself, did the debate commission just give him a major favor? They just sort of set some rules which are going to put him in this little bit of a box, and he actually may end up coming out looking significantly better than if they would have just left him alone. And another component to that is, he kept interrupting Joe Biden, and during that first debate, Joe Biden was from my watch of this, him and Chris Wallace they could have been the same person. They were both debating Donald Trump, and I thought that was totally unreasonable and unfair and unprofessional. But if Joe Biden is not being interrupted all the time, then he has to talk and fill that full time. And he's not going to be able to be saved by the moderator. So this actually may go from what I originally interpreted as being basically a 2-on-1 to a much more even fight. So I think that the original intention of making these rule changes was to make the debate a little bit more, I would say, palatable to the American people. But what it may end up doing is actually significantly helping Donald Trump because, it's like a toddler who's just throwing everything in the room. If you sit them down on the couch, they can't throw things anymore. And they're a much better, well-behaved child at that point in time. Kind of sad that we have to talk about that in the context of our president, but that's where we are. All right. Let's change gears. Let's talk about Kristen Welker. Kristen Welker is going to be the moderator tonight. I don't watch a lot of the mainstream news. I don't watch any of these shows. I don't even have cable, but I have heard of her name, but I've never seen anything that she has done. So I wanted to dive in a little bit further and figure out who this person is. So here is Kristen Welker, and this comes from her Wikipedia page, and this also comes from the New York Post, a couple of these bullet points. So she went to Harvard. She was a history major there. She graduated. She joined NBC News as a journalist in 2010. She became an MSNBC News White House correspondent. She would appear actually at the White House press briefings and still does. She started that in 2011. She became a co-anchor of Weekend Today, which I don't know what that show is, but that started in 2020. So I think in January 2020. And the New York Post did some digging on her. She's not currently registered with a particular party, but in 2012, she was a registered Democrat. And in 2014, she was also a registered Democrat. No, in 2004, I think in Rhode Island, she was a registered Democrat, right? So she's the moderator, and we want to know who she is and where she comes from and what she does. A lot of the people at the first debate were concerned that Chris Wallace was a Fox News anchor. Everybody just associates Fox News with this right-wing, conservative faction. I don't think Chris Wallace is really a part of that. I can sort of agree with that analysis or that characterization of Fox News. If you put in, Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, and you put in Sean Hannity, yeah, I can understand that. Chris Wallace, I didn't see as part of that. I think he's actually considerably more liberal than anybody on Fox News. Anyways, the point is that people want to know these moderators. What is the background? What's their experience? What's their predispositions, and how are they going to handle this thing? And so that's just the facts, right? That's what she is. That's who she does, or who she has been over the last years. Now, there's been some other digging going on. So the New York Post, which in my mind seems to be the only actual media entity right now doing any actual investigative journalism across the board. They're the only ones digging into these things, but they were able to find some pictures and some other associations involving Kristen Welker. And so it's important, I think, to know about him. I don't think it really changes much of anything, but she's been in politics for a long time. Here she is with Barack and Michelle Obama in December 2012 at the White House, looks like for a Christmas party. So that is the moderator there, spending time there. There's also been some information about her parents. Her parents are big Joe Biden fans, and this was something that Kristen Welker actually posted on Facebook, right? So I think it's from her Facebook profile even. So, she's posting this publicly for everybody who follows her to see. Her mother is a prominent real estate broker in Philadelphia. Her father, Harvey Welker, is a consulting engineer. The both of them together, they have donated tens of thousands of dollars to the Democratic candidates. They've donated close to $20,000 to Barack Obama. According to the Federal Election Commission, according to the FEC data, there was $3,300 for Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, $2,100 for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, another $7,300 contributed to the Democratic National Committee between 2004 and 2020. All right, so her parents are highly political, very involved in the Democratic Party, big proponents of Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Barack Obama, right? Those are her parents. Does that matter? Does it mean anything? That's up for you to decide. Of course, a journalist is not going to be donating to those things, but she's taking pictures of her parents and posting that they're united for Biden on Facebook. So, do what you will with that. There's also been some criticism regarding her, that she's very aggressive. This is a scene from an Oval Office situation where Donald Trump is dismissing a question from NBC News correspondent Kristen Welker. This happened in May of 2019. You can see right there. And, a pretty aggressive little question going on there, leaning over the couch and just going right after Donald Trump. So, again, I don't fault her for that at all. She's a news correspondent. She should be asking hard questions. She should be going after and trying to get answers out of our elected people. Don't fault her for that at all. But there are some interesting questions taking place there. Now, there is another, I read another article, I wanted to mention it, where Donald Trump apparently, when she got that job as a correspondent, was favorable to her. Or I think she was asking him questions during some sort of a press briefing, and he said, "Oh, congratulations, you got that job as the co-anchor on whatever the news station is." So, they know each other. They've obviously been in close quarters for a long period of time, right? They see each other around the White House, around the press conference briefing. So there's some history there, and it's not surprising that Donald Trump would come out and start bashing the moderators. He's done that ever since 2016. He was always coming out against the media. It's part of his shtick. So you just have to sort of take that with what he brings, right? That's just what he does. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully the moderator does, I think, a better job than Chris Wallace. I thought that was one of the worst things I've ever seen from a moderator, especially somebody as experienced as Chris Wallace. It was a disaster, and I think he let that get out of control. We saw the vice presidential debate, which was excellent. She did an amazing job, I thought. That was a very polished, very well-managed debate across the board, and I'd like to see more of that. So I'm hoping we can see that tonight, but we shall see. We'll see pretty soon here, actually in about an hour and a half. So hope you're ready to rock and roll for that. All right, now let's change gears. Let's talk about Donald Trump's special guest. What? Remember I think it was last year, didn't he bring some of Bill Clinton's accusers to one of the debates? What was her name? I can't remember her name, but he brought him to the debate. So he does this, he brings people to the debates to make things uncomfortable. Yikes. It's savage, right? I think I saw a Twitter out there, #SavageAF. And I agree with that. It is, it's a big move, and he is doing that tonight. But who is it going to be? Well, according to Chuck Calesto, there is breaking news that Donald Trump is going to bring Tony Bobulinski to the Nashville debate. Bobulinski is Hunter Biden's former business partner who has confirmed multiple emails. Uh-oh. So literally the day of the debate, we have breaking news involving the Hunter Biden scandal. Weird how that works. Isn't that strange? All this stuff waited until October. Then we just have some major bombshells being dropped on pretty critical days. Today's one of them. So who is this guy? Who is Tony Bobulinski? It's hard to keep track of this stuff. Yesterday, we did a little bit of a deep dive on all of these different allegations that are bubbling up from all of the different sources. And today, there's yet more. There's even more. And it's coming up literally an hour or so before the debate. So let's take a look at this fellow, Tony Bobulinski. Let's see who he is. He released a full statement to the New York Post. He posted this article was posted today, the New York Post. You can go check it out. Hunter business partner confirms email details Joe Biden and his push to make millions from China. He says here, "My name is Tony Bobulinski. The facts set forth below are true and accurate. They are not any form of domestic or foreign disinformation. He's not being influenced by the Russians. Any suggestion to the contrary is offensive. I am the recipient of the email published 7 days ago by the New York Post, which showed a copy to Hunter Biden and Rob Walker. The email is genuine. This afternoon, I received a request from the Senate Homeland Security Committee requesting all documents related to my business affairs, as well as foreign entities and individuals. I have extensive relevant records and communications. I intend to produce those items to the committees in the immediate future." And then he tells you a little bit about who he is. Like, who is this guy? When I am thinking a lot about the Hunter Biden stuff, it's really sort of abstract. It's all these, mysterious, shadowy figures who are, sort of subterranean. We don't know who they are or what they're talking about. And a lot of that, I think, has been part of the reason that the national media, CBS, ABC, NBC, all of these big organizations, Twitter, Facebook, are doing, such a focused job on suppressing this story and suppressing this information, is because at least their excuse was they can't authenticate it. It's not credible. They don't know who's behind these stories. Well, now we have somebody who is telling you who he is. He's saying, I got all these records. I've got a lot of confirmation of this stuff. And here is who I am. He says specifically, I am the grandson of a 37-year-old Army intelligence officer, he's the son of a 20-year naval career officer, 28 years. I myself served our country for 4 years, left the Navy as lieutenant. I held a high-level security clearance. I was an instructor, CTO for naval nuclear power. Take great pride in my country. I'm not a political person. What few campaign contributions I have made in my life were to Democrats. All right, sounds pretty credible there, right? They're looking for somebody who is credible to authenticate these stories. Guy sounds pretty credible to me there. This was the original headline that came over from the New York Post. Biden-China deal. Business partner confirms Hunter emails legit. Says he worked with the big guy, Joe, to solicit millions from Chinese in 2017. So Michael Goodwin posted this article today, and we go back to the letter, and you can see that it just kind of goes on and on. This guy is sort of detailing his credibility. If the media and big tech companies had done their jobs, this would be irrelevant. I've had long-standing service. I can no longer allow my family's name to be associated or tied to Russian disinformation or implied lies. After leaving the military, I became an investor, traveled over 50 countries. America is the best in the world. I'm outlining, I know this because I am the CEO of Sinohawk Holdings. Okay, he's a CEO of Sinohawk Holdings, which was partnership between Chinese CEFC and Chairman Yi and the Biden family. I was brought into the company to be the CEO by James Gilliar and Hunter Biden. The reference to the big guy in the much publicized May 13, 2000 email is in fact a reference to Joe Biden. Okay, so if you remember that email, that was the email where they were talking about holding off 10 million or 10,000 or whatever it was dollars for Joe Biden. The other JB reference in that email is Jim Biden, Joe's brother. Hunter called his dad the big guy, or my chairman, quote, and frequently referenced asking him for his sign-off or advice on various potential deals that we were discussing. I've seen Vice President Biden saying he never talked to Hunter about his business, and we've quoted that here. We played the quote yesterday. I've seen firsthand that's not true, because it wasn't just Hunter's business. They said they were putting the Biden family name and its legacy on the line. And he finishes this off. He says, I realized the Chinese were not really focused on a healthy financial ROI, return on investment. They were looking at this as political or influence investment. Once I realized that Hunter wanted to use the company as personal piggy bank by just taking money out of it as soon as it came from the Chinese, I took steps to prevent that from happening. So all of this is going to be documented. The Johnson report connected some dots in a way that shocked me. It made me realize that the Bidens had gone behind my back and gotten paid millions of dollars by the Chinese, even though they told me they hadn't and wouldn't do that to their partners. I would ask the Biden family to address the American people and outline the facts so I can go back to being irrelevant. So I am not put in a position to have to answer those questions for them. I don't have a political axe to grind. I just saw behind the Biden curtain and I grew concerned with what I saw. The Biden family aggressively leveraged the Biden family name to make millions of dollars from foreign entities, even though some were from communist-controlled China. God bless America, he says. Ooh, yikes. All right. So, right, this is where things start to get a little bit serious. Okay. They were trending that way for a while. A lot of us were suspecting that maybe there were some legitimate sort of tentacles or roots to this story. And it looks like as the days go by, the Trump campaign under the total execution of Rudy Giuliani, this is, don't get me wrong. This stuff is certainly tainted with political motivation, no question about it. It's October. The election's in 11 days. Of course it's political, right? Like that, what are you kidding me? That doesn't undermine the allegations. The allegations themselves seem to be independently corroborated. Even if it's being brought out at the last minute to sway an election, it's still there. And now we see some confirmation from other people who were a part of it. Now you have to also ask yourself, who is this guy, right? We told you a little bit about him, but it's a very self-serving statement. That's his statement. Is there anything else? Is he being pressured by anybody? Is he under undue influence? Is he under duress to make these statements? Or are these statements even against his interests? So there's a concept in criminal law that if you make a statement against your interest, that statement can be used against you, against certain rules. There are certain rules that keep a lot of your statements out of court, but there's other rules that say, well, if you said that and it was actually hurting you, like if you just walked in and you told your wife, hey, I just murdered that guy, and you think, well, my wife's not going to tell anybody, and your wife does tell somebody about that, that statement is deemed to be more credible, because why would you tell your wife you just killed somebody if you didn't? That's a statement against your interest. You would never admit that, but you did. So we're going to say that statement is a little bit more credible because it's directly against you. If you said it and it goes against your well-being, it must be truer than not. That's kind of how the law views it. So this guy's statement could seriously be a statement against his interest. Okay, if he's involved in any of these, type of money laundering, I don't know how international finance works. Let me just go ahead and lay that foundation right now. I'm not an international finance guy or an international finance attorney or have anything to do with any of that. But you could imagine that there are all sorts of rules in play that prevent this type of stuff from happening. I don't know how China works, but presumably when you have American diplomats involved and you've got American citizens and American tax laws and you've got Chinese, spending money to influence people one way or the other, you'd imagine that there are some pretty tight regulations around that. And so if this guy allowed his company, or if he was even personally involved in any of it, that could expose him to certain levels of criminal liability. So when you read a statement like that and he's posting it and he's signing his name and he's giving you, more information about who he is and where he came from and why he's putting the statement out, to me, a statement like that reads as credible. Okay, the New York Post posted it. A lot of people have a lot of criticisms about the New York Post, but a statement like that, if it's an authentic statement and this guy, is verified, then I think there's probably a lot of credibility there, and it's not something that the mainstream news media can then suddenly just sweep under the rug as they have been doing. This story is now becoming authenticated. It's now becoming verified. We now are hearing from people who was a former CEO and a lieutenant in the Navy. These people have credibility. It's not these shadowy figures anymore who are running around the Middle East. Okay, this is an American citizen who served our country, who is now saying he was a party to this misconduct involving not only Hunter Biden, but Joe Biden. It needs to be talked about, whether you think it's legitimate or not, whether you think it's Russian disinformation or not, whether you think Rudy Giuliani was, doing something in his pants with Borat or not, whether you think he's a credible figure or Jeffrey Toobin, it's not, it's irrelevant. This allegation now needs to be talked about, and we'll see if it happens. And we'll see if it happens tonight. Again, not holding my breath. John Roberts said that, John Roberts is over at Fox News. If they don't talk about it tonight, well, this is just going to become even more and more toxic to the Biden campaign, because Tony is also going to turn all of his electronic devices and records of business dealings with Hunter and Jim Biden over to the FBI. Okay, we kind of gathered that from his letter, but John Roberts is now confirming that as well. So all of the material, all of the electronic devices, all of the records, it's going to go right over to the FBI. Although I don't really know what the FBI is going to do about it, because apparently they have this laptop since 2019 and it's just been sitting in a desk drawer somewhere because nobody knows what's going on. We're in the middle of an election where one of the people who is subject of that investigation might be elected to the presidency, and his son might be just sort of enmeshed in this upper echelon of power in the United States. And the FBI doesn't think it's pertinent that the American people know about this stuff. Twitter doesn't think it's pertinent that you know about it. Facebook wants to limit the spread of this information because they think you're too stupid to digest this information on your own. You're too dumb. You're going to fall for all the fake news. You don't have any logic or capability to reason, so they can't show you this information. They're going to show you this information, but not this. Hey, little Johnny, we're going to take this away from you. Here, why don't you this is good news for you. Just eat this news. It's better for you. It's insulting, and it's part of the reason we keep covering it on this channel, because I'm embarrassed for the mainstream media in the country. We'll see what happens tonight, but again, not holding my breath too much on that. All right. What would I like to hear about on the debate tonight, which again, I don't think what's going to happen. Would love to hear about them ask about qualified immunity. Should the police, still maintain their qualified immunity? Can they get away with a bunch of stuff? What about police unions? Do either one of these guys or their administrations have a plan for addressing the police union problem? I see a lot of issues with police unions. I think that they protect a lot of the bad officers, and I would like to see something done. Are they going to potentially talk about civilian oversight committees? So maybe bring in some civilians to talk about implementing some procedures for our police. What about the use of force reform? Is there going to be any changes there? They're going to talk about cash bail or civil forfeiture, but basically the government coming in and just taking your property because they say it was a part of a crime and holding on to it and selling it and profiting off of their investigation of you, whether or not you've been convicted. Are they going to talk about that? What about these searches and seizure laws? Or how about, I think more appropriate than if we're going to be talking about COVID-19, are we going to talk about criminalization of COVID-19? Specifically, if you are not wearing a mask, are you going to be charged with the crime? Are they going to go arrest these people who are, not following the government mandates? We've seen people get arrested for it on this channel. What are they going to do about that? How about any funding for mandatory body cameras? Are those things going to go on the internet? Can we talk about those? Can we see them? Can they be publicly accessible? And someone mentioned this last night on the live stream, specifically about pardons for Snowden, for Assange. Is there going to be any talk of any of that? Probably not, right? Probably not. All right. Well, we've got to get to the live chat because we got some things to talk about. The debate is coming up shortly. And let's see what we have going on. All right. Let's chime in with the viewers. So I'm switching on over there. So get those keyboards warmed up. And let's see what the chat has to say. All right. GG says, hi, Faith. So Faith's right back there. She helps me do my show prep. She does a lot of the thumbnails. She's amazing. She's back in the office. I told her about our little debacle that happened here. I think that was on Tuesday night. And she kind of got duped on that also. So very, very clever, but she's now on the lookout for it. So no more shenanigans taking place in this chat. All right. Let's see. Cameron Templeton says, Tony Bobulinski held presser claiming Joe Biden knew about Hunter business deals. Wall King says, if you find out a future president is corrupt, should not be allowed to run. End of story. Okay, we've got some other questions. Isn't this debate supposed to be focused on national security? So that's one of the talking points. There's 6 topics today. One of them is national security. So we'll see what they really get into. Michelle Imburgia says, I don't think Trump understands civil forfeiture. He needs to. I would agree with that. Voters aren't deciding between Trump and Biden. They're deciding whether or not to vote at all. I think that's probably true. I think most people are just going to make that decision. I can't imagine that a lot of people have not made up their minds yet, but they will. This type of debate is going to be about energy. It's going to be about, okay, who can we energize to actually return their mail-in ballot or to go vote? The election's in 11 days. You want that energy to carry over. So I think the winner will really be the one who is able to energize their current voters the most to get them to show up. All right. Eric Highsmith says, this is a much better list of topics to talk about. Yeah, I would like to know those things. Michelle says, I love your list. 150 million people already died from guns, so that would be the entire country. Did Joe Biden say that? That was Sendo? 150 million dead? It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. That's like, what, a third of the country? Theo says, should have been 15 hours of debates, but only a couple hours to see our fates. USA Libertarian says, rest in peace, foreign policy. Marine 2007 says, do you think it would be better for Trump to bring up the Biden scheme or just let the media distribute it? So this is a great question. I was thinking a lot about this. I do think that Trump should bring it up. I know that's not kind of the popular mainstream position on this thing. I've seen a lot of the Republican commentators come out and say Trump needs to drop the Hunter Biden stuff. He just needs to stop it because people don't care about Hunter Biden. People only care about, putting food on their table. They only care about paying their rent. That's it. And I get that, but keep in mind, there is think about this. Every ABC viewer, NBC viewer, the people who only watch, the MSNBC, the mainstream news channels, they have not heard of this issue at all. I would guess that it literally have not even heard about it. So I think that this is Trump's only way to sort of pierce that little facade. I know a lot of people in my life, especially the older demographics, who just don't follow any alternative media. They don't have Twitter. They don't have Facebook. The only thing they tune into is NBC, Fox News, CNN, CBS, NBC, ABC. That's it. They get their news from there. And the only one of those that has been covering this story has really been Fox News. And just recently even, this story has been percolating for some time and nobody has heard about it. So I think if Trump actually mentions that, he may alienate some of the viewers who say this is not appropriate. But I think, quite frankly, if Trump doesn't bring it up, in my mind, that indicates that there's not much more coming out. If he does bring it up, I think it's because there's more evidence that he knows he has, because remember, Rudy Giuliani has the hard drives. And if he knows that tomorrow they're going to drop this, and Saturday they're going to drop this, and Monday they're going to drop this, and 3 days before the election they're going to drop that. If they have that all already systematically planned, then he may bring it up just to fill out that campaign. Like, think about it like an email campaign or a marketing campaign. You say on day 1 I'm going to send this, on day 2 I'm going to send this, on day 3 I'm going to send this, or a workout plan. On day 1 I'm going to do that, day 2 I'm going to do this. They have that in play. They've already written this out. The playbook has already been decided on. So we're going to see what part of the play they're in. What Donald Trump is going to do is going to show sort of what else might be coming. So I think if he brings it up, there's more stuff coming. If not, maybe we've kind of seen the climax of this. I'm not sure yet. Michelle says, I agree. Trump must bring it up for the non-alternative watchers. He continues to have bad advisors in his camp. Tony Bobulinski is speaking right now. He's blowing up on Twitter. Really? Okay. Let's see what's going on there. See if I can pull that up. Can you put links in the chat? I don't think you can, right? Presidents cannot take bribes from foreign countries. Trump should mention maybe 5%, but not dedicate the whole debate. Maybe drop a link to where to find it. Yeah, I agree with that. If he can sort of weasel it in there and just mention it, if he can get people, if he can make the Hunter Biden term or the Joe Biden or this guy's name, Bobulinski, if he can make that trend, if 100,000 people go on after the debate and start searching those terms in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Florida, that might be it. Right? They may see what's here. They may see allegations of child pornography and all of that, and that may be the end of the campaign. We don't know. All right, JW says, it's likely that Biden will win, just looking at the polls, but these allegations will be so toxic it will follow him to his term. What are the possible impacts? So it's a great question, but I mean, it depends on what happens with the rest of the election. So if, let's say that Joe Biden wins and he is put into office and the House of Representatives stays Democratic and the Senate stays Democratic, then there's really nothing that can be done about it. Joe Biden's in office, right? The American people elected him in spite of all of these allegations. So the Democrats are not going to start impeachment proceedings against Joe Biden. They're not going to do that. They're not going to, go after him and say, we're going to impeach our own party. They would never do that. Never. The Democrats are a very close-knit contingency, so they're not going to do that. And if they did do it, are they going to pass that over to a Senate that is also controlled by the Democrats? Are they going to convict Joe Biden? No. Now, an alternative would be that Joe Biden says, you're right, there's too much heat on my family here, Hunter Biden, and me, so I'm going to go ahead and resign, and I'm going to hand the keys right over to Kamala Harris. Right? That would be one alternative. Joe says there was 100,000 peeps watching the Fox News live. Bob. It's about to go viral. It won't be the end of the campaign. His supporters can just claim it's a rightist hoax conspiracy and pretend they don't care. Sound familiar? Yeah, that comes from Zulu. Ramon RD. Let's see, at R&R from GG says, not really a question about the show, but I was wondering if you could live stream the debate on a Discord server. Would love to see your reaction live. That would avoid your stream being shut down. Interesting. Yeah, interesting question, GG. So I'm working on, I'm not going to be able to do that today because the Discord, I don't have any of that stuff set up yet. I've been playing around with Discord. I want to get that in play because I've seen how other people use it and it seems pretty fun, but I just don't. I won't be able to get that done tonight, but I do have a 7:30 show scheduled. So as soon as the debate's over, I'm going to be taking all my notes as the debate is live, and then I'll come back on and we'll share some reaction. So that'll be fun. Biden is compromised. This comes from Las Vegas. Harris is named in the deals. She's gone. Interesting. Tony Bobulinski sounds like a true patriot. That comes from Eli. Guy says at R&R Law Group, people can go search the Hunter Biden story only to have any negative search results get suppressed by Google. Yeah, I have noticed completely how this story seems to be just missing. Has anybody else noticed that? Like, I've noticed that on my Twitter feed. It just feels like this story is just non-existent. Like, I have to go out and find this information. Now, the Rudy Giuliani thing, as soon as that broke yesterday, it was trending on the side of Twitter and it was all over my feed. Everybody was retweeting it. So like, some stories are allowed to get through and some other stories aren't. And it's very obvious to me. I'm wondering if anybody else feels that way. Sniper Jared says moderators are going to try to direct the entire debate to be about irrelevant, borderline, non-existent, FBI-infiltrated white supremacist groups. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Chris Wallace tried to do that at the first debate. Remember, he asked Donald Trump to disavow the white supremacists and the Proud Boys, and we were all sitting there going, wait a minute. The people burning the buildings down in the streets, those don't look like the Proud Boys. I'm pretty sure that's Antifa. Why aren't you asking about Antifa to Joe Biden? It was a weird, really weird question, but they tried to redirect it. So it's sort of, it's part of the playbook. You take your weakest point, what is my biggest weakness? And you just sort of flip that and you start accusing your enemy of that. And that's what they do. They're very good at doing it. And I think that's probably going to be the situation here. Remember, yesterday, the FBI, the Director of National Intelligence, came out and said that they have evidence that there are foreign entities now trying to send email blasts to people, claiming to be part of the Proud Boys, making threats in order to influence the election, in order to essentially make Donald Trump look bad by saying that his supporters are threatening people, likely to trigger a response to sort of, push back against that. And so there is, of course, there's always going to be people trying to meddle with the elections. Always. I don't know what's so complicated about this. A lot of the people who are part of our media and who part of the sort of the ruling political class, we hear them every day on the news talking about, oh, there's no election interference. There's no evidence of widespread election interference. We see these, dumpsters full of ballots and these car trunks full of ballots all over the place, but they want to get on and say, there is no mainstream election fraud. That's not happening in our country. But as soon as it's a foreign entity, they're all over the place. Okay. Well, now the Russians did it, so therefore we can talk about it. We believe it if the Russians are doing it, but we don't believe it if it's American citizens doing it who are just taking ballots and throwing them in the fire. So, why is that? What's going on there? Well, it's because one has a useful purpose. If it's a foreign agency, if it's the Russians, then they can use the Russians to say that Donald Trump stole the election. But if it's local people and they're doing things according to the rules that the Democratic Party wants or that the political ruling class wants, that type of stuff is okay. Collecting ballots, having extended deadlines, mail-in, deadlines extensions, waiving witness requirements, not requiring a notary for absentee ballots. We've covered it on this show. If those rules are in place, the Democrats must think that gives them some sort of a tactical advantage. They wouldn't be hiring these mega law firms and dumping literally millions of dollars into lawsuits that are working their way up all across the battleground states, all across our country, up to the Supreme Court. Why are they making that investment if it's not going to secure them a tactical victory? They wouldn't. They don't care about little grandma not being able to vote. They don't care about that. They do if it's going to mean they don't win the presidency. So they'll sure as hell get her ballot and throw it in the mailbox. But it's not about that. It's not about voter integrity, this concept of protecting American democracy. It's about winning the presidency. It is the biggest prize in the entire planet. So everybody from all the angles is dumping money into this thing in order to get that tactical advantage. So you just have to ask yourself, why are they doing these things? And it's usually about money. Mark Taylor says, report out of Texas yesterday was that early voting in the state's first week surpassed the number of people that voted for Trump in 2016. Ballot harvesting is just like Russia disinformation. It's a big hoax. What about the cure Trump had? This will end the pandemic. Why is that not the biggest news? That comes from Wall King. I'm not sure. I had not heard about a coronavirus cure. I would like to see an actual debate, not you're a racist. Yeah, I would like to see that too. Yeah, the racism allegations are kind of tiring. It's toxic. Are they going to ask Donald Trump again to disavow white supremacy? because he hasn't done it 100 times already. They might need to ask him again because we're unclear. Maybe they'll ask him again. Maybe they'll ask him at the beginning of all of the 6 segments. Mr. Trump, before we talk about COVID-19, I've noticed that COVID-19 is disproportionately impacting the African-American community. Is that because you're racist? Right? That would be maybe a good intro question. I voted for decades and I've never voted in person. We don't even have in-person votes in my state. That comes from Ramon. I typically vote by mail too. Yeah, I typically do. Jay Shopta says, look at the polls. Most people don't worry about climate change. Yeah, I really don't. I really agree with that. I care about it. It's an important issue, but there's so many other things in my mind that have higher priority. I don't know why we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I think we're on the right track anyways. Jay Shopta says, I live in AZ, fellow Arizonan. Good to see you, my friend. Let's be honest, Trump will never address qualified immunity. I agree. I think those are the questions that I proposed were like dream come true questions. Like if I could just sit down with these guys and say, all right, listen, I'm a criminal defense attorney, right? I've got all these attorneys and all these, all these people we help, and we have, we want to change the justice system. I have 20 minutes of your time. Here are my, my 3 things I want to talk about. That's what those questions would be from. But they're really detail questions. Trump and Biden, they're not detail people. They're big picture people. The details are left to the lower level individuals and agencies and local municipalities and those things. So those questions are really more pointed to them. But I would love for somebody to talk about police unions. I would love to hear that. If anybody's going to do anything about them, I think it's the Joe Biden campaign. Donald Trump is, really kind of all in for police, and a lot of the police are all in for police unions. And so I don't think that's going to change, but I would love to have that question addressed because I think it's a huge, huge problem. Clinton Noel says Trump is compromised, is trending. AG Bill Barr's compromise is also trending. Does not surprise me. What about Trump's secret bank account in China? I haven't looked into that story. The tax stuff is extremely boring in my mind. If Donald Trump Jr. has a laptop full of child porn and pictures of him with a crack pipe hanging out of his mouth, I'll cover that story. Christopher Jones says, I'm excited to see how many different ways Trump brings up the Hunter Biden story. Will they mute him for that? Yeah, so that's another great point, and I was wondering about that myself. So we know that the mics, according to the rules, the mics will just go on when you get your time, but they'll go off when your time is out, right? Which seems fair to me because that doesn't leave a lot of the discretion up to somebody who gets to turn them on and off. If somebody gets that ability to sort of kind of censor, then that person is just going to be ridiculed and abused from all angles. Nobody in America wants that job. But if they just shut them off after your time has expired, that's pretty reasonable. But if they're on, are you allowed to just go off? Let's say they ask Donald Trump about climate change, and he says, you know what? Let me tell you about climate change. I would like to see the climate of bribery and corruption rooted out. I would like to change that climate, and I'm going to talk about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden for these next 2 minutes. Don't you dare touch my microphone. What would they do about that? Would they allow that to happen? Might be more of a pertinent topic than the climate change topic. William Collins says, old, slow, creepy, crooked, quid pro Joe should really like national security and family in light of what's coming out about Hunter. Climate change is real. In 100 million years, the sun will expand and cover the earth and raise global temperatures. Yeah, I know. We better do something before then. Clock is ticking. We're on the clock, folks. Hey, just wanted to say thanks again. That comes from Benjamin. Benjamin, good to have you here. Thank you for being here. Las Vegas says Rudy G turned over the hard drive to Delaware because of the child porn. Yeah, we talked about that a lot yesterday. It's a serious, serious allegation. So if he's making that allegation, there better be something there. Because if it's not, if it's a picture, of a kid taking a bath or something like that, that's like a normal family thing, and they blew this whole thing into an exaggerated, nonsense, that is totally disqualifying and in my mind criminal. So there better be something there. Otherwise, that's going to backfire badly, as it should. It's going to be an awkward Thanksgiving dinner at the Bidens. Yeah, it will. He doesn't have a healthcare plan for replacing ACA. He said they're working on it all the time. Yeah, Donald Trump. Yeah, he's kind of dropped the ball on that one for sure. I think there was a lot more that he could have done to sort of shore up his domestic policy in certain areas. Trump needs a megaphone and a sign. that says wrong. It's one of my favorite clips of Donald Trump when I forget, was it during the debate? I think it was during the debate with Hillary Clinton where he just kind of leans into the mic multiple times. He goes, wrong. It was hysterical. It's like, you guys, such a difficult person, but it's hysterical. I believe it's even hard to find current info on YouTube. Yeah, I think that's probably true. A lot of people voting against Trump or for Kamala. Yep. There are 2 rules, 2 minutes without interruption each. Opponent mic will be muted. Then a minute or 2 of open discussion, both mics on. That comes from Joe Broderick. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we saw that. And I think that's pretty fair. And once, the counter to that is what happens when that open discussion goes on. Are both of these guys just going to start screaming at each other, or how's that going to work? Zulu says, child porn appears on the laptop after being in possession of computer engineers for 90 days, who then execute an agenda to turn it over. Sure, that'll stick. Yeah, so that's a great point, right? There's a lot of authentication problems with that allegation. And so what Zulu is talking about specifically is a problem with the chain of custody. We talk about this. Anytime evidence gets transferred from one person to another, think of it like a chain. So if I give this laptop to my brother, that's one chain link. I passed it to him. Then he passes it to the FBI. That's another link. Then the FBI passes it to an expert witness. Who is that? Then the expert witness says, I don't know how to handle this, so I pass it to another expert witness. And you got to connect that entire chain. If you go back here in Zulu's example, what you're seeing is, well, the laptop was with these, who knows who these people are, for 90 days, right? For a long period of time. Is there any potential that they could have basically severed that chain? Did they alter any documents? Did they impede it? Did they damage the evidence in any way that would compromise it? And I think that's what the defense would really latch onto. It's a laptop. There's basically no corroborating evidence on it, and there's a lot of ways you could attack that laptop in and of itself. But it's going to be up to the FBI and to the law. They're going to be the ones that have to authenticate it if they're even trying to do that at this point. Don't worry about the CP. That is a distraction for the normies. There is nothing there. It's the Pizzagate play all over again. That comes from Mark Taylor. Yeah, I mean, I could easily see that happening. If that is the case, if they're making child pornography allegations and it's not even close to true, that is basically it for Rudy Giuliani in my mind. Gigi says, will this debate be a bigger or smaller disaster than the previous thoughts? So I think this is going to be a less nuclear explosion, less nuclear fallout this time. I think so. I'm hopeful that both sides realize what a disaster the first debate was. I think some of these rule changes are a little bit necessary. I am hopeful that we don't get the same version of Donald Trump that we got last time, because I didn't think it served anybody. Honestly, I know Trump is Trump, and I think it would be a huge mistake to try to rein him in a little bit. If you bring a version of Donald Trump out tonight that doesn't look like Donald Trump, it's going to look very fake. It's going to look like something that's manufactured, and it's going to make him look very weak. He's going to look like somebody who's desperate. Like, this is the last stand. I have to change my entire persona and my entire personality in order to connect with the American people, in order to win. And if people see that, if they see too much of a reformed, moderate type of a Donald Trump, I think people are going to be not okay with that. They're expecting something and they want to see that. And if he's a little bit, too moderated, that would be a mistake. But I think the rules and I think the sort of seriousness of this debate is a little bit different than the previous one, especially in light of the proximity to the election and the issues that have been coming out over this past week. So I'm hopeful that it's less of a disaster. Never Trust a Lawyer says 2020 is a disaster, which is a good observation. USA Libertarian says the real story is the pay-for-play money from Ukraine and China. At Guy, Trump said it was fake news. The first debate was not fair. That comes from John L. I agree with that. I thought it was very, very one-sided, and I thought that basically Chris Wallace was a third participant in the debate against Donald Trump. I thought it was very unfair. Why is the media so in the bag for Joe Biden? I don't know. I think it's just an ideological thing. To me, my experience with a lot of people on the left is that it's very, it's very kind of cliquey. Like you're either in with the cause or you're not. And in my experience with, I've got people on both sides of the aisle. I've got people who are super Trump, fans, and they support everything he does. Other people on the other side who, are physically ill at the sight of Donald Trump. And when I have conversations with both of them, one side is a lot more reasonable about the issues. And it's typically not the left. Okay. They're in my mind, more emotionally operative. They get angry, and the conversations tend to be less productive. So it's very cliquey in that way. So if you want to be a part of that clique, you have to get in lockstep with them. And a lot of the media, I think, just falls into that camp. A lot of the big tech people fall into that camp. It's just part of the group. It's like a group identity at that point. You sort of define yourself by being in opposition to Donald Trump. And I mean, that's something that we saw this a lot during the Bush years. One of my big questions was, what are all these people going to do? What if Donald Trump does not win? What are all of these people who make a living every day of every morning waking up and bad-mouthing the president? What are they going to do if he's not the president anymore? What's the reason for their existence? I mean, I saw a Twitter post yesterday from somebody who was upset that Donald Trump was sitting in Marine One in his helicopter with the press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany, sitting in there, and she had a mask on and he didn't. And he posts this picture that says, this is outrageous. Look at what a piece of garbage this Donald Trump is. And you're like, God, these people are literally spending every waking minute scrutinizing everything that the White House is doing so that they can call him out on it. It's like the sole reason for their existence. And if you're a part of that group, if you're a part of that community, how do you escape that? You can't. And you kind of just get sort of roped into this belief that literally everything he does is just the end of the world, and America is just melting and burning down to the ground. It's like hysterical paranoia derangement. And I just don't see that from the other side of the aisle, quite frankly. And there are those contingencies for sure. When Obama was in office, everybody, he's selling out our country. He's going to, sell us out to Iran. He's paying them $150 billion in cash. Like, what's he going to, and you're thinking, all right, like, is that going to happen either? Did Obama sell us out to Iran? No. Okay. Is Trump selling us out to Russia? No. Right. How about everybody who's being hysterical just take a step back and let's actually think like human beings, because both of what you're saying is largely irrational. If Trump wins, is Stephen Colbert out of a job? I sure hope so. That comes from Never Trust a Lawyer. Why would big companies go for Trump knowing he would raise their taxes? So Trump has done a lot to lower taxes. So I'm not sure if you meant Joe Biden. Trump attacks their self-image of taking DC seriously. That's a great point. Yeah, it's a great point. Give me the president that isn't blowing up my news feed daily. Yeah, that comes from True. Yeah, Twitter is one of those things that's interesting. I see a lot of stuff from the president on Twitter that I just go, oh my goodness. Pretty wild. The news from NZ, Sky News, and Korea is not biased. The difference between those countries and ours is terrible for most of the American news organizations. That comes from Mike Bonnet. Yeah, I don't have any experience in either of those countries, but I would imagine there's a better way to do it than how our current media is doing it. It feels extremely biased to me. And they're not even, the problem I have with it is that they're not even giving me the information. Like, at least just let us see it. Like, just report it. Just report it. Spend a little bit of effort on that. Then we can be the judge. But they don't want to do that. They just want to censor the news, which is such a huge offense in my mind. It's so inappropriate. It's like the antithesis of everything that America is about. It's free speech, and we want to communicate ideas. We want freedom. And by them selecting what we can and cannot talk about, that is such an abuse of power that it's really, really disgusting, quite frankly. I have watched many hours of the ground interviews. There are two candidates, Trump and Crazy Hate Trump. Not much promotion on Biden policies. Sniper Jared says, do you think there will finally be consequences for the FBI who sat on this evidence for a year if the CP allegations turn out to be true? I don't think there's going to be any consequences for any of these people, unfortunately. We've seen it already. We've seen it across the board. These people just get away with everything. It's part of the reason we started this channel, because I'm so sick of seeing it. It happens everywhere. It happens on lower levels. We see cops who kill people. We saw a cop in Arizona, I'm not going to get into it, who shot somebody, in my opinion, murdered this kid. And then went to trial. In my opinion, the prosecutors, did a half-assed job on the whole thing, and he ended up getting not convicted. So a cop shot and killed somebody, got not convicted. The Mesa Police Department, which had let him go, rehired him so that he could collect his pension after the trial was over before he resigned again. So think about that, right? This cop is in the middle of this massive investigation, shot and killed somebody. The police fire him, then they hire him back on after the trial's over, and then let him go again so that he can collect his pension for the next however many years. So he gets away with that stuff. And in my mind, that is all just part of the problem of our system. And that's here locally. That's a state police officer out of the Mesa Police Department. And that's not an isolated incident. If you go back on the early videos, I used to hold up cops' mugshots and just say, this guy did this, and this guy did this, and this guy did this, because I wanted to make a record of this stuff. I wanted it to be immortalized on the internet, on YouTube, because these people escape culpability far too often. It's the whole reason we started this, the name of the show, Watching the Watchers. Let's shine some sunlight on this malfeasance that's going on. So if that's happening with local police officers, do you think that these FBI agents are gonna suddenly come under the gun? No way. No way. It's all political at this point, and they're all going to cover each other up. If Joe Biden wins, this whole thing is just a wash. It all goes away in my mind, and they're all protected. So it's really unfortunate, but we as, I think, the American people who are interested in how this country runs, should be a little bit more outraged at some of the escaping criminality that takes place on a daily basis. Brad Cement says, Trump has done more for this country in 47 months than Biden has done in 47 years. Yeah, I really don't know what Joe Biden has done in his 47 years other than be what I call the godfather of mass incarceration, because he is responsible for 4 separate crime bills throughout the 80s and the 90s that are responsible for creating the justice system that we have today, which is, of course, riddled with problems, as we are seeing around the country. All of this problem, all of these issues with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks, Jacob Blake, all of them are directly related, in my opinion, to Joe Biden's work in the 80s and 90s when he was passing the crime bills. Blue Sky for Eve says, I worked for the Fed for 30 years. There is no accountability. Any comments on the Nigerian police protests? I don't have any comments on those. I didn't even know that was happening. That comes from True. Thanks, True. I'll take a look at that. Hopefully not, somebody says, but just because he was a person of color does not mean it was racism. Do you think that the Justice Reform Bill by Scott was a good start? That comes from Michelle. I'm not familiar with that bill. I would have to take a look at that. Clinton Noel says, people have mainstream media talking points bouncing around their vapid brains where their critical thinking skills should be. That's a great point. So I follow a guy, Scott Adams. I mention him all the time on this channel. I'm a huge fan of him. I probably mentioned him too much, but he has this concept where he talks about your opinions are not your own. They're sort of assigned to you. They're programmed into you by the media people that you follow. And I feel that. I feel like a lot of people think that way. And, it's troubling. I would like people to use just a little bit more critical thought. Like if at the end of every segment they watched on NBC or MSNBC, they said, what does Fox News say about that same issue? Or what does an alternative version say of that same issue? That's what I try to do on this channel. I watch, the stuff that I follow regularly. I look for the counterpoint and I try to address both sides. If more people did that, I think they would be, I think the country would be better, and I think they would feel better, because unfortunately, remember, the news, their entire purpose is to get you riled up so that you turn back in. They want to fire you up. They want to make you angry so that you tune back in. You take a commercial break, calm down for 2 minutes, and then they come back on with another outrage, another huge problem, another end of the world thing that Donald Trump did or that Joe Biden did. And they want you to get fired up. So if you just turn that off a little bit and use your own mind and read some alternative articles, I think you'll be better off mentally. I mean, a lot of people I talk to who watch the news all day are some of the angriest people, literally, that I know. All right. See, other questions. Okay. I love how you say, so this comes from Fermenti Mountain. I love how you say, I'd like to see more of that or this. It seems to be what you say to the perp during parole review. It says a lot that you say it so casually regarding the system we are stuck with. It's an interesting comment. Can't sue the mainstream media. They're protected with that Section 230 or something. Biden sounds like Biden. Is that a coincidence? That comes from Gigi. Cynthia MC says, how can we get term limits and age limits? Yeah, that's a good question. So it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about the Supreme Court, then that's going to be by constitutional amendment. So if you want to limit the term or if you want to put an age cap on that, it's going to require a constitutional amendment, which is a huge, huge hurdle. Now, Congress could pass I think limitations on themselves, but they'll never do that. Brad Cement says, you are wise beyond your years. Thanks for your contribution to our country. It's very nice. Thank you, Brad. It's very, very nice. I appreciate that. I don't know that I'm wise beyond my years, but I'm trying my best to stay informed and I'm trying to add some value to the conversation. Just trying to be useful. I think that we as Americans, we could do more by having, focused civil discourse, focused conversations. If we can just say, all right, listen, I know it's hard. I know it's hard for us to not start screaming at each other and ripping each other's hair out, but we're just going to talk about these things kind of in a peaceful manner. And let's just explore the issues. I think that would serve us better, right? Remember the Lincoln Douglas debates, how they just sat there for 4 hours and just talked? It's pretty good. I'd like to see more of that. I think the country would be better served. So I'm just trying to, contribute in the little slight way that I can. So I appreciate that comment. Elias Diaz says, in your opinion, is there media bias against Trump? It seems with the debate commission not wanting to talk about some areas that Trump has done well on, like foreign policy, it's hard for me not to see. I think there's massive, massive media bias against Donald Trump. I think it's massive. I don't, a lot of people would say he deserves it. He deserves every bit of it because he's so toxic and he's so vulgar and he's so, non-presidential. So they just don't want to cover him. I don't buy that argument at all. I think that it's specifically calculated to literally limit certain stories from getting exposure, and they really amplify other stories. I think it's, I think without any shadow of a doubt, actually, that there is massive amounts. Their word was collusion, but I think it's clear collusion with the media that they are trying to undermine his exposure and his impact. Okay, do you think Trump will pull the upset off again? I do. Yep, I do. I am on record for that. I do think that Trump wins. The press advocates for the left. I agree with that. You should definitely be a better moderator than any. You would definitely be a better moderator than any of the chosen for the debates this year. I would love to moderate a debate. Yeah, it's just a simple debate, and I think we'd have a lot of fun with that. Here's a fun exercise. How about you say one thing you like about Biden? So Joe Biden, in my mind, is somebody who is, something nice about him. I think he's a pretty genuine guy. I would say that. So if we're talking like personality, I think he's a pretty genuine guy. I actually like his disposition, generally speaking. Like I think if Joe Biden, came into my office and we sat down, I'd probably get along better with him than with Donald Trump. Donald Trump is abrasive. He's certainly vulgar. He's, I think, a difficult person. He's like sort of the epitome of the alpha that is as a difficult personality. There's not enough room in most buildings for a personality his side. Joe Biden, I think, does an excellent job empathizing with people. I think I watched some of his town hall. I think he connects with people on sort of a human, emotional, empathetic level. And I think it's actually genuine. I see a lot of politicians who try to do that, and I don't believe it. Kamala Harris is one of those people. I see her all the time trying to be this like, oh, I care about you. Like, oh, tell me about your plight as the American voter. And it just seems so fraudulent and fake. Joe Biden, I think that he genuinely means it. I think he kind of feels these things. And that could be naive. I don't know. In terms of policy, I really can't point to much, right? What did he do in the White House during his 8 years there as vice president? Did he have any big things? Trump put Pence in charge of some of the coronavirus stuff. Pence has been pretty active. I'm not real sure what Joe Biden did. You can correct me on that. I am highly critical of Joe Biden for his positions on criminal justice reform. That's really kind of been the only area of policy that I've taken a deep dive on for Joe Biden. But I'm open to it. If there's any other thoughts that he shares about something good that he has done, but I just can't look back on his 47 years and see really what that has produced. I know it produced the 1994 crime bill, but I think that's kind of his big accomplishment, right? And I vehemently disagree with everything that's in that bill. So it's hard for me to talk about positive policy positions that Joe Biden has come up with, because I just haven't seen much about them. And throw them in the chat. I mean, shoot, if Joe Biden has a stand-up policy position that I'm just missing, I'd love to know about it. All right, let's see. I like the way you give your election prediction without hedging. Just a short answer. Yeah, I think Donald Trump wins. Zulu says mission accomplished. Very well done. 10% for the big guy, Joe. It'll be funny if Donald Trump comes out and actually calls him big guy. What if he does that? What if he just takes the stage and says, hey, big guy? What if he does that? He might do it. He may actually do it. You don't think President Trump has a great sense of humor, maybe a Joker kind of guy? I do. I think Donald Trump, that comes from Della W. I think Donald Trump is hysterical. I think he's hilarious. Totally inappropriate, totally, not, says a lot of things that even I wouldn't say, but it's pretty funny. And there's one clip that I may try to play when he's going after somebody about the virus from China. Do you remember this clip where he's actually, a reporter is going after him and they're saying, you're calling this the China virus and it's so offensive. And he says, no, it comes from China. That's why I'm calling it the China virus. He says, no, it comes from China. And he said China the way that he normally says it. And if you watch him, I've watched this clip maybe 50 times. If you watch him, he knows what he's doing. He knows how funny that China version was. So when he says China, he goes, you can see him thinking about it. You can see him go, oh yeah, that was a good one. That was a good China. And he knows it. And you can see these micro expressions in his face where he's sort of going, that was a good one. And because it's almost like a shtick, like he's got these little personality quirks that he is using in a tactical manner. I think Trump is a lot wiser than a lot of people give him credit for. And he knows how to use these sort of, perceptions or these caricatures of his personality to his advantage. So he loves the orange man stuff. He loves the hair stuff. He loves all of it. And he uses it effectively. And I think people think he's just this big bumbling doof, but he's not. I think he's highly intelligent and he's very systematic in how he uses language and persuasion and motivation. I think he's very, very tactical and very, very excellent at it. That's why he became the president. Okay, people think that he just bumbled his way into the presidency. Remember, this is a guy who wiped out like 19 different Republicans, big names, Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, billions of dollars of politicians, just wiped them out. Then went up against Hillary Clinton, who was the presumed nominee, right? We absolutely just going to win this thing. And it was 92 to 8% it was going to be. And he wiped her out too. It's not because he's a bumbling idiot. It's because he's very tactical. He's very astute and he does a good job at this stuff. And I think that he's timed this very, very well. If the election, if this trajectory keeps going and there's this constant drip of malfeasance implicating the Bidens, if there's more stuff that comes out, I think it's kind of a no-brainer that he wins. All right. Las Vegas says his IQ is off the charts. Trump claims that he doesn't joke. LOL Kush says, love the content. Good to have you here. Rook said, did you see the new interview with one of the cops in the Breonna Taylor case? What a clown. The guy said he wished he had burst into the apartment without knocking. No, I did not see that. Yeah, we're due up for some serious criminal law updates, but there's just been so much going on with the SCOTUS and now with the debates and then the elections coming up in a week. So we will get back on track with a lot of the criminal justice topics. It's just been something that has been on a little bit of a back burner because there's so much other things to talk about. But I will take a look on that. All right, Trump will end communism. I don't like Trump, but Hillary was horrible, and that is why I did not vote last time. Emilio says, R&R, what's your opinion about how Trump handled the virus? Ooh, that is a big, big question. So I think it was not the best handling, quite frankly. I think that there was a lot of missteps that were made. I think his bravado was not a good fit for the virus. People didn't want bravado. People wanted empathy. They wanted sympathy. They wanted reassurance. They wanted security. and he came out with a lot of bravado. And I think he mismatched the tone of the country, and he's still suffering the repercussions as a result of that. And that may be something that actually cost him the election. It was just a tonality mismatch. Bravado is great for going against China, for going against Russia, okay, for beating up NATO, for beating up the media, for, ripping the Democrats. It's great for that. But bravado is not good for dealing with a pandemic that's, resulting in people dying. So I think it was just a little bit of a mismatch there. Zorro says he should have fired Fauci. If Biden wins the election and a large money laundering scheme is proven against Biden's, will Kamala assume power? Again, from LOL Kush. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the next line, right? If Biden has to either, resign, or if he gets impeached, which I don't think will ever happen unless the Republicans win back the House, then yeah, maybe she becomes the president. I think that's kind of where they're going with this thing anyways. 48 King Master. Wouldn't have it been better if they didn't knock? Boyfriend would not have had the time to grab his gun. Yeah, back to the Breonna Taylor stuff. Brad Cement says, with regards to the virus, let me tell you firsthand as a person who works in surgery for over 19 years, this is being blown out of control. Silver Sharky is responding, says Kamala may be implicated as well. I see Harris in power no matter what. Yeah, that comes from J-Duds. I agree with that. I think that the establishment wants her in positions of power for sure. And they're going to do what they can to get her there. Zorro says the 25th Amendment might get him. Yeah, probably referring back to Joe Biden. I played that clip of Joe Biden yesterday. So, I've had issues or had some concerns and thoughts about Joe Biden and his sort of mental capabilities. And then I've seen a couple clips where he's like very spry. I played the clip here where he's running up the elevator, running up the stairs to his airplane. And he just like, boom, ding, 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 ding. He's right up there. I mean, amazing. I'm like thinking that guy's spry. And he's, he's riding his bike around. He did very well, I think, at the last debate. His speech was clear and enunciated, and he was able to articulate coherent thoughts. But then we played a clip yesterday where he was on an interview with somebody else, and he was clearly, I've watched a lot of people and a lot of videos of people slurring their speech. He was slurring his speech without any question in my mind. He was talking very slowly, and he was getting flustered up. So he didn't look good on that clip from just a couple days ago. We'll see how he does tonight. So the point being there that if that trajectory continues on, the 25th Amendment may become applicable if he does win the presidency. Silver Sharky says Harris will Californicate the crap out of the country. Purchase tents and blue tarps now. GG says, I was wondering what you think about Trump causing mass radicalization on his website. He makes you choose between identifying as an American or Democrat. Isn't that seriously damaging our country? Yeah, I agree. That's not a very nice distinction. Either you're American or you're a Democrat. I think there's a lot of very good Democrats who are good Americans. And I think that's a little bit, it's hot, but that's what Trump does. He's provocative. I think it's very provocative. USA Libertarian says he's on Adderall. Not that there's anything wrong with that, ... He's probably wearing his mask too long. That comes from Zorro. NABR. What is that? Salt, bromine? Is that an element? Do you think the focus on national law enforcement policy is a mistake since so much is locally controlled? Yeah, I do not want a national police anything. No, not at all. The bigger the police agencies, I think the more that the malfeasance can hide. They can cover up a lot of the problems in their agencies just simply through bureaucracy. They just layer on these different levels of bureaucracy. A national police force, I think, would be as big a disaster as anything, right? Like a national motor vehicle department, or our national health plan, which is not, or the health care act, which is not working so well. I basically don't like the federal government getting themselves involved in local things. Locally, we can police ourselves. We can handle it. We don't need the feds to step in. Maybe some sort of federal guidelines or some federal. They're already providing a lot of funding to different states. That's how they that's how they control the states, is by using the purse strings. But if they were to come through and said, look, we're gonna make this contingent on you complying with this federal program that mandates that we have masks. I'm not masks. I don't want masks. Body cameras. Body cameras, or a centralized database for police misconduct, for Brady material. Those types of things I'm okay with on a national scale. But if we want to say that all of the police departments are going to be part of a national police force or a national police agency, I could not be more opposed to that. All right. Let's see. Other questions. Somebody asked, do the Mexican-style federales sound like a good idea? No, they do not. There's nothing in the Constitution to provide for a national police. Come to think of it, nothing to provide for the FBI, and they're all political. Clinton Noel says Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, Sean Hannity, Mike Huckabee, Donald Trump, and now the exercise is complete. The results will vary, but this is meant to be an exercise of individual liberty. Biden may not show up to the debate after the press conference. All of the Hunter Biden emails were just confirmed on national TV, and Joe named specifically. Wow. Evidence to be turned over to the Senate tomorrow. Whoa. What did I just miss? Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's take a look. What is going on out there? So we've got, now that's a denial from Ben Shapiro. As Chris Wallace, Biden campaign responds to Tony Bobulinski, who is Trump's invited guest tonight. Statement from Andrew Bates, NC. Chris Wallace said on air about this very smear, Vice President has actually released his tax. Okay, so they're going back on the tax returns. Joe Biden has never considered being involved in business with his family, nor in any overseas business whatsoever. He has never held stock, nor has any family member or any other person ever held stock with him. What is true is that Tony Bobulinski admitted on record to Breitbart that he is angry he was not able to go into business with Hunter and James Biden. What is also true is that, in contrast to Vice President Biden, Donald Trump has a secret China. Okay, so they're dumping it back on him. Pathetic farce by flailing campaign with no rationale for putting our country through another 4 years in hell. Has never even considered being involved in business with his family, nor in any overseas business whatsoever. That is... wow. Very, very interesting. This election is America versus China. The stuff on the hard drive is disgusting. All right, so enough of Twitter. Let's go back to you. That is interesting. Very, very interesting. Joe Biden is the big guy. Why does Trump have these massive rallies and have such low polling numbers? The emails confirmed. Hooray. Didn't they say that Hunterland paid because he held stock? It's a perjury trap. That comes from USA Libertarian. Yeah, that's kind of what we were suspecting was happening, right? That Rudy Giuliani was trickling this stuff out so that he could get the Biden camp on a record and then drip more stuff out. So if they just denied in that statement that they were involved in any business dealings and Rudy Giuliani has evidence that he was, then he just lied to the American people. That would be the argument. Emails were debunked, says Zuluzite. See, people can say a lot of things. Las Vegas says no files tax returns on criminal activity. Biden did not file those in his taxes. Anyway, I'll put the exercise in the comments. Sorry to chop up the chat. Trump 2020, bada boom, bada bing, from Blue Skies Forever. Nicholas says, why don't we have police like Constitution upholder that makes sure that people aren't getting choked out and killed across the country? It's kind of up to the American people to hold them accountable. People, I think a big part of the problem with a lot of things that we see in America is that many Americans don't have skin in the game anymore. They don't have any investment in a lot of these government entities that we have empowered to do things that impact our lives. We don't have any investment in them. We just have turned over all of the responsibility over to these entities. We just say, oh, the federal government will take care of that. Oh, the state government will take care of that. Oh, the police will take care of that. Our politicians are good people. They'll handle that. And, you sort of just get into this cycle. And then these things stop working, and then people don't have any recourse because they've abandoned all of their responsibility. They don't know what to do, and they just have to live with the systems who are now autonomous and just kind of running on their own and spiraling out of control because they're not held accountable to the people anymore. So we want to see more people with some skin in the game so that these issues are resolved locally. You can't have, it's really hard to have skin in the game when you're sitting in Arizona and the federal government is 3,000 miles away. There's no connection there. They don't know us. I don't know them. How they think things should run are different than how I think they should run because they're 3,000 miles away and they don't know anything about Arizona. So my point is we want more people to be invested in these things. A national police force doesn't do that. We need local solutions. I think that's my opinion. All right. I know you're not an immigration attorney, and sorry for the broad question, but what do you think about the crisis at the border? What's the biggest change needed? That comes from Gigi. That is a big question. The crisis at the border, I really don't have a lot to say on that right now. It's a tough one. I really have a lot of empathy for the people who are coming, who want to come to the United States. I think the United States is a beautiful country. I think I've been to other places around the world. I've been to China. I've been to Europe. I've been to Mexico, and I want to see more people be able to partake in the American dream, in the beautiful idea of capitalism and freedom and all of the amazing things that we have here. So I want more people here, but I also want to make sure that they are, at least acclimating and sort of integrating into American culture and that they're doing it legally. And I want to see people, not be sort of a subclass of citizens, which I think is really what both parties want. I think the Democrats want it and the Republicans want it. They want the sort of this this secondary tier of citizens who are sort of taken advantage of. I truly feel that from both parties because neither party wants to solve this problem. They're okay having more and more undocumented people coming across the borders. Nobody has done anything to address it. For as long as I've been alive, Donald Trump has been the only one who has ever done anything, to put a border wall up. Whether you agree with that or not, at least he's doing something to try to address the issue. Have not seen that from almost any of the other politicians. They want to do these things like comprehensive immigration reform and all of that, but nobody wants to stop the flow of people into the country. And I think the reason being is because they see that there is some tactical advantage to that. Either this is a lower level, working class of people who big corporations can afford to pay lower amounts of money because of their status, or Democrats see them as potential voters. Once amnesty comes through, or once they get amnesty on the table, they may just suddenly have 30 to 50 million new voters, who are here undocumented. We don't know they're here. We don't know what the true number is. So I would like to see it solved. I have a lot of compassion for the people who want to be here. If I were in their shoes, I'd want to be here too. And so I sympathize with that, but I do think that there needs to be more put in place so that the process is legal, and these people come in and they know that we have American values. They know about freedom of speech and about the things that make this country great. I don't want to import a bunch of people with the system of government that they have in Mexico or that they have in Honduras or any of these other places, because in my mind it is not as good of a system as that we have here. So I want to make sure, and you can call me xenophobic on that and call me bigoted on that or whatever, but just from what I have seen, I appreciate how we do things in this country, and I think I would like other people who immigrate here to also appreciate that. When I see people who go through the naturalization process and they come out on the other side, I have immigration attorney friends, and I see a lot of this. When they come out holding the American flags, it almost brings tears to my eyes at how happy they are to be a part of this. That's how I feel almost on a daily basis. I feel just great to be a part of this, to be able to build our law firm from a folding table in a spare bedroom to what we do here, helping people on a daily basis, to talking with you. I want more people to be a part of that. I want more freedom, more, opportunity. And I would just love to see an immigration proposal or some sort of, bill that helps us get there. I think that would be great. All right. Let's see what else. Well, we're getting close to that time, folks. So let's do this. Let me leave it here. I am going to be back right after the debate. So I'm hanging here at the office. I'm going to watch the debate. I'm going to take vigorous notes on this thing, and then we'll be back here right after it. So literally right after the last the last bell, the last ding, I'm going to come right back in here and we're going to turn this sucker back on. Probably will not have any PowerPoints or anything like that. So I'm not going to have a lot of fancy slides or video clips, but I will be able to just go through my notes and we'll talk through some of the debate. So I hope you can join us for that. Right now is a good time to go and take a quick bathroom break because I think the debate is starting in like 10 minutes. So we want to take a bathroom break and get some food, get some energy, get some caffeine, do whatever you need to do. And let's go watch the final debate in the year 2020 in one of the most important elections of our time. I'll leave it there. Thank you so much. We'll see you in about an hour and a half